Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. It's probably no surprise to you. We've been covering ad nauseum to some the Bachelor Clayton Echard paternity scandal, one in which received some rulings last week after the June 10th evidentiary hearing that showed that Clayton Echard wasn't lying, that he was the victim of a paternity hoax, and the judge found his accuser, Laura Owens, uncreditable. The judge found her to not be believed. And we've been covering this story for several reasons, of course, because we cover Bachelor News and because we've been kind of adjacently included in the story. By that, I mean sued for harassment, threatened with massive $140 million defamation lawsuits. I laugh when I say it. But to some people, they believe, I guess I should not be talking about this story because I guess maybe it hurts certain causes, which I want to get into. Now, it's one thing, look, I know I try not to comment on the one-star reviews, the negative reviews. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. Trust me. I know that. I perform live stand-up comedy. I can see it in people's eyes when they don't like me. Now, to a lot of people's surprise, I do pretty good on stage in front of audience. I'm more of a likable type. There are some comedians that are very abrasive. That's not me. I'm surprised. I'm surprised sometimes when I can rub people the wrong way, but trust me when I say it happens. And it's not just strangers. I was called out last week by a friend in front of a lot of people, and that led to some hate coming back to my podcast. So as a hater exits, I want to share what they said about me veering squarely into the manosphere. I'll be honest. I had to Google manosphere. I really did. I'm well aware of what aspects of the manosphere are, which we'll get into. But first, I'll read the review. Now, look, if someone doesn't like my podcast because there's too many ads on it, it's like everyone can vote with their dollar and do whatever the hell they want. Although, again, I'm not in control of how many ads end up making it into the podcast. It's actually kind of interesting. I'll say put an ad here, and then my fill rate might be between 20 to 50%, which means for every ad I say to put in, 20% to 50% of the time, they put the ad in. It really depends on the demand. Like right now, it's a busy week. It's the end of Q2. It's the 6th. And by the way, it's June 25th. Is that the day? We are halfway to Christmas. This is so exciting. What a good day. So jingle bells to the haters out there. Either way, I'm not here to sink myself down to the people that don't like me, but I do want to sort of educate to those that might want to rewrite the story of what went down. So all I'm here is to say I'm objecting to being told I'm squarely in the manosphere. This is insane. This is so far from the truth, but it is a very interesting thing that I've had to kind of deal with collaterally in covering the story, which is not just lost friendships, which again, not trying to play the victim here, but the lack of media attention for this story. In my belief, because the victim is male, the only reason we've had to cover this story ad nauseum, the only reason it's been stretched out as far as possible is because this lady uses all of these positive movements. She takes advantage of them, and in turn, the men have their lives ruined. You know what I mean? So it's very fascinating and it's very complicated to talk about. So this is from my Rush Hour podcast. Again, there'll be a link in the description in the comment section if you want to join the podcast. I would appreciate positive reviews from those that actually do get value from the show. It's fascinating. There's almost no 2, 3, or 4-star reviews. It's either a lot of 5s and a hell of a lot of 1s. Now, don't get me wrong. Our overall rating is still really high. But folks like this, on the way out with the other 1-star reviewers, and by the way, again, we haven't had that many, but I did know that after I was blasted last week, I don't read the comment sections in those hater subreddit threads, but I do know that whenever there's someone dunking on me, there will be a victory lap, kind of a parade in the streets by those that, for whatever reason, I have scorned. I followed Dave since the early days to his multi-platform Nashville ones. I have no idea what that means. As his fame and revenue increased, so has his snark and clickbaitiness. to be fair, my thumbnails have always been the perfect dose of clickbaity. And by the way, I reject the term clickbait. Clickbait is when you completely misguide your audience in what you're going to share. Like, this isn't a clickbait or baity title. It's a bold, big font, and it shows you exactly what we're going to talk about. This isn't clickbaity whatsoever. It actually delivers, I believe, to the subject of, does the subject reflect the title? If it does, it ain't clickbait. So anyway, my snark, whatever. In self-righteousness, that was more moderate as he was building his channel. I believe it was there all along, but it's just become so much more pronounced and imbalanced, veering squarely into manosphere, albeit with a predominantly female audience. After years of daily listening and following, time to move on. This review is for the others who feel the same. Less funny, less relevant, more ads, more mean. It was a good ride while it lasted. Well, statistically, the ad rates are down by a lot on the YouTube channel. So the YouTube channel has way less ads, but my podcast has only been around for, a year and a half, and I've only been doing double episodes for the last 6 months. But as far as I know from the last 2 episodes I looked at, 25-minute episodes ended up turning into 30-minute clips. So by that, it means there was 5 minutes worth of advertisement speckled across a 25-minute free podcast. I'm not here to get into the financial shaming of it all. People can decide if that's too much or too little, but we gladly watch a 30-minute sitcom, which is really only 21 minutes, and then that's got 9 minutes of ads. And I mean, I'm a one-man shop here, so that the ad revenue is really what I rely on. But again, that's not what this is about. This is about that I'm imbalanced with my manosphere coverage with a predominantly female audience, which, by the way, manosphere generally would play towards men, but this commenter is right. We do have about a 92+% female audience. I know there'll be a lot of women. Not to say I know what women are going to think, but I know there'll be a lot of women in our channel that are very upset with this because they go, he doesn't speak for me. Dave doesn't, it's the same sort of strategy in calling our community a cult, which Laura Owens and her attorney have called us a cult, dozens of times, really. But also, we've been called that by our haters in the Bachelor world. They've said, oh, Dave's audience is a cult. They pay him money. They do this, they do that. Yes. We accept Venmo donations and PayPal and Cash App. Yes, that all exists. Yes, there is a private membership community where people get a hell of a lot of content for about $5 a month on the lower ends. And people can also join Patreon for free. So all of these different pay models do exist, but are we really preaching what the manosphere preaches? That's the question. I know I look like a guy that might have stormed the Capitol. I'm a white guy with hair. I run around. I know I may. All of my ideological beliefs tracked back years, really since I started getting involved. I don't know who I voted for in college. I have no recollection of any of that. But since I've followed politics, I've been pretty squarely and staunchly, might I say, a progressive, which means I want the ultra-rich taxed at a higher level or their fair share of taxes. I want social services like universal health care, like medications are covered. I want more money to go into mental health coverage in the way we police, the system. I want a lot of things that help lower middle class. I was raised by a single mom. I reject the idea. A lot of people say, oh, he said he has a sister, so he acts this way. Well, when you're raised by women, you do tend to have, I didn't have a misogynistic father who was telling me this way, that women are in the kitchen. No, I was raised by a strong as hell woman who did not have help from my father, who was a Vietnam vet who she had moved away from, and there was no communication being made. He has since passed, and we do thank him for his service, but he was let down by his government, because we're all about the troops until they come back home. Don't forget that. Now, obviously, times have gotten a little bit better for the troops, but he was a man rejected. So I have a lot of empathy for those that have felt rejected by their government, whether it be as troops or whatever sicknesses and things we don't cover and we don't protect our own. And I understand all of that. I think across politics, we can agree on that. But the manosphere, I had to Google it. The manosphere is a diverse collection of websites, blogs, and online forums promoting masculinity, misogyny, in opposition to feminism. Now, I don't think it's wrong to promote masculinity. I think masculinity and femininity are vibrational levels. Hold on, stick with me. That exist in men and women across the spectrum. So by that I mean my wife has several traits that are more feminine than mine, and I have several traits that are more feminine than her, and vice versa. There's areas that she's more masculine than me. So when you look at it less like one's a gender issue and one's not, you look at it more like I think healthy masculinity is fine. I think toxic masculinity is not. Man up, son, don't cry. If you've watched my channel the last week or so, you've seen me cry. We've mourned the loss of our family pet. We've mourned the loss of friends as collateral damage. And my own bitterness, which I've been open to, has been very hard to sort of come to terms with. In following a case where I've had my family threatened, I've had myself threatened, my livelihood, I've had my character called out, not just by Laura Owens on her blogs where she calls me a cyberbully and all these other things. Constantly, the next video I make, she's going to say, well, I only committed fraud because I was trying to combat a cyberbully. All of the good that we've done with an audience fully consumed by women, all of the good that we've done, and yet some will say, oh, Dave's part of the manosphere. I'm not a men's rights activist. Now, the idea behind this is kind of complicated, right? It's like those that say, well, Black lives matter, but all lives matter. Yeah, sure, of course, all lives matter, but the reason why Black Lives Matter was a saying is because of the police brutality that existed. And by saying all lives matter, you're taking away a movement that was, it's like, it ain't your time, is my point for the all lives matter crowd. Although I know people mean well when they say it, right? And the same is with men's rights. Sure, men should have rights, but also an MRA, a men's rights activist, is a term that's been hijacked by people that are like, well, but men are being left behind. And it may be true that there are a lot of men and a lot of white men, because our country is predominantly white. You know, we're a very diverse country, but it's still the majority is white. And half of those white people are men. So they may think their issue is, you know, the lower middle class, the South and the blue collar communities. They may think their issue is, oh, feminism stole my jobs and all these things. It's all misdirected, right? The issue is the government and the lack of a proper livelihood that can exist. So we've got a middle and lower middle class really fighting amongst ourselves, thinking this is the problem, that's the problem, when the real problem is that jobs don't pay enough and wages, haven't gone up with the cost of inflation and all these other things. That's a separate issue. Fathers' rights groups is interesting because now we're actually beginning to strike on the way Laura Owens took advantage of these men. She took advantage of them in family court, which I think we all can agree favors women. Now, I have to say, and I've probably said this in every interview I've given, I believe the most dangerous man in a woman's life is a guy she knows. Statistically, you're more likely to have to deal with a very serious and sad and scary issue with somebody you know, whether it be an ex-boyfriend, a husband, an uncle, a friend, a guy you knew from the club, or a friend, that's more dangerous statistically to someone than a scary guy in an alleyway. And because of that, I think I've given a wild amount of empathy for the actual victims in family court, which are mainly women. In family court, well, I don't know the stats, but in family court, the court system is there to help moms when they need to get out of a bad situation. A lot of times, moms, young parents, young mothers, they give up their livelihood to raise their kid. And then in toxic situations, there's financial control. Like my wife lost her job when she got pregnant. She relies on me for livelihood. Now, I'm not dangling. Now, will I audit her Amazon purchases? Every once in a while. Hey, honey, do we really need this? Well, I think we do. Okay, get it. And if I say, and I don't think I've ever said no to her. I'm always like, all right, I had to log my complaint, but it's not me dangling the income over her. We're a community. We work together. And God forbid something went sideways, she would get a portion of what I'm able to make because she's watching and nursing the baby. I'm over here working. We are a team. We are a team. And I've got a badass wife. I've got a true feminist by the definition wife who's not going to let any toxic aspects of masculinity creep into our relationship. And I value her for that. Why? Because I feel as if I'm confident enough in my manhood and sexuality that I can have a strong wife. And so when we look into these things, if the manosphere is against some of these groups, I just strongly reject it. While the specifics of each group's beliefs sometimes conflict, they are generally united in the belief that society is biased against men due to the influence of feminism, and that feminists promote misandry and hatred of men. Now, are there men who hate women? Absolutely. A lot of incels, which stands for involuntary celibate. Yeah, sure, they exist. Absolutely. There's plenty of men who hate women because they've been rejected and this and that. They absolutely exist. Now, with that admission, there, of course, must be women who hate men because of the way that they've had to deal with rejection or torment or physical abuse or whatever. A ton of issues, of course. There's going to be people that hate the other gender because they don't have the ability to empathize with them. I empathize with my wife in the way that I have seen people interact with her, treat her very transactionary as a beautiful woman. I've seen people not value her intelligence because she's got a nice smile. I've seen the way, all of these things. So I've seen a world that has been very kind to my wife, in a world that has also been the opposite to her based on merely appearance and by being a woman. So accepting the ideas as these red pill ideas, I reject. I reject that we're a part of a manosphere. The manosphere overlaps with the far right and alt-right communities. I mean, it is simply not true. Now, we've had threads in the past years where people think, oh, is Dave some crazy alt-right guy and all this? Like, look, whatever skeletons they're looking for, oh, he votes this way, or it, like, I don't know what to tell people other than I'm not going to let somebody say I'm part of a manosphere as a slur towards what we're doing, which is providing justice to the victims that were taken advantage of by a woman. We should all rise up and really seek justice for all of the crimes that were committed here by this woman who is now crying wolf to a bigger issue where we need women's voices. We should believe victims. Absolutely. She took advantage of that. And I'm not at fault for that. Now, this won't be the last one-star review we get from this whole situation. As far as changing people's minds, I do think people that come to my channel, you might get a video where I'm running around with my short shorts going crazy, doing a little performance arts, having a little too much cold brew. Absolutely. But I do think when given the benefit of the doubt, what we're doing over here is positive change, not just for this story. And again, I'm not saying this to toot my horn, but I will toot the hell out of the horn of my audience as some of the most generous people out there. Every year, we've raised money for different causes, whether it be funding teachers' wish lists. Christmas has really grown. One year we did Toys for Tots, the Marine-based donation. But since then, we've provided relief to a lot of single moms and single dads, really. But we say single moms because it's a majority female audience during Christmas time. And we're going to do that again this year. We're going to continue to try to help in ways we can, provide in simple ways. We've had people reach out, Dave, you're not making a difference. Whatever. We've had hate come from all different angles. I will continue to run my channel in a way that promotes abundance, not for men because they're angry at women, but for my community primarily. an audience full of women. We're here to have these conversations. We're here to nip the loopholes in the butt. And I'm not going to stand for those that want to smear us with inaccurate descriptions of what we have going on because they're triggered by it. Look, it's a heavy conversation. As somebody in my Patreon mentioned, the idea of a trigger means you feel a certain way based on something you see out there. So if anyone's triggered by these videos that we make about these male victims and all of this, I urge you to figure out why you're triggered, and either A, if you can't fix it, avoid the channel, or if you can fix it, really look into it, because a trigger means that you need to like deburden whatever sort of feelings you have in there. And I have to think of that whenever I get triggered. There's plenty of things that trigger me, and I go, geez, why am I acting so viscerally? Oh, maybe I'm not pursuing this thing in my life, authentically enough, and I need to work harder, and I'm triggered because I feel my own guilt or whatever the case may be. So that all exists out there, but I had to, and maybe this is the longest video I've ever made based on a 1-star review, but I had to say, I will not accept the notion that we are a manosphere. And also, I think it's laughable to our really, really smart audience of a ton of lawyers, pathologists, experts, other podcasters. I mean, we have a really high pedigree of intelligence here. Is that the right way of saying it? With our audience. Y'all aren't dumb. But sadly, I guess to those we've triggered online, they think we're all part of a cult. All right. Well, I got a lot more content to get into, so we'll do it. But keep spreading the love. That's all I can say. I hate to be so cliche and use the Obama, when they go low, we go high. But let's continue to use this energy to promote positivity and change and love, and let's spread it as best as possible. If you haven't listened to my podcast and you want to combat a 1-star review with a couple of nice reviews, go check it out. Just search Dave Neal wherever you listen to podcasts. There's a link in the description. If you click on it from your phone or your desktop computer, it'll pop up twice daily, our episodes, every morning, every afternoon. We'll see you then. Bye, everybody.